Welcome to Moon and Fire. I'm Emily Bailey, founder of Whole and Wild, where I guide women back to their sacred wisdom through ritual and cyclical living. I'm creating this sacred space for your whole self to be here, your wisdom, shadows, longings, and your fierce power. Welcome home, sacred woman. Today I want to talk about something I've been witnessing in my work with women navigating sacred transitions. A pattern that's so common, so normalized, that many of us don't even recognize when we're doing it. It's called performing wholeness. I believe it might be one of the most spiritually harmful patterns we've inherited from our culture. Let me paint a picture that you might recognize about what performing wholeness actually looks like. You show up to work, to family gatherings, to social events, and when someone asks how you are, you smile and say, "I'm good," even when inside you're feeling foggy, exhausted, unseen, or completely untethered from yourself. You maintain the appearance that everything's under control. Your calendar is managed, your responsibilities are handled, your life looks put together from the outside. But internally, you're running on fumes, disconnected from your own needs, pushing through rather than flowing with your natural rhythms. This is performing wholeness. It's showing up like everything's fine, even when it isn't. It's the carefully maintained facade that says, "I've got this," when the truth is that you're barely holding it together. And here's what's important to understand. This isn't just a minor social nicety or a harmless coping strategy. This is a pattern with real psychological and spiritual costs. Research on emotional suppression shows us that bottling up or hiding what we really feel is linked with lower emotional well-being and diminished self-esteem. It actually reduces connection and responsiveness in relationships because our nervous system senses that something is off and retracts rather than deepens safety. In other words, when we perform fine, we don't become fine. We displace the deeper work our system is asking for. Before we go further, I want to acknowledge why we do this. Performing wholeness isn't a character flaw. It's a survival strategy that many of us developed to navigate social pressure, expectations, and judgment. Maybe you learned early that your authentic feelings weren't welcome or were too much. Maybe you absorbed the message that good women don't burden others with their struggles. Maybe you discovered that maintaining the appearance of having it all together kept you safe from criticism or unwanted attention. These patterns developed for good reasons. They helped you survive contexts where authenticity felt dangerous or was met with rejection. But here's the challenge. What once protected us can become what imprisons us. When we continue performing wholeness long after we've left the context that required it, we stay trapped in outdated survival strategies rather than stepping into authentic power. That's kind of a big deal, so I'm actually going to repeat that entire paragraph that I just said because it feels like the potent part of this. Here's the challenge. What once protected us can become what imprisons us. When we continue performing wholeness long after we've left the contexts that required it, we stay trapped in outdated survival strategies rather than stepping into authentic power. So let me be direct about what performing wholeness actually costs you. First, it slows your transformation. When you stay in the story of "I'm okay," you legitimize reheated versions of your wounds, patterns, and coping strategies. You make it nearly impossible to access the real work your soul is calling you toward. What could shift in weeks or months instead takes years because you never create space to face what's actually true. Second, it disconnects you from your body's wisdom. Your body knows the truth of your experience, but when you're constantly performing a different reality, you train yourself to override those signals. You lose access to the intuitive knowing that could guide you toward what you actually need. Third, it prevents genuine connection. Research on authenticity, the alignment between what we experience inside and what we show outside, shows a significant positive relationship with psychological well-being. When there's misalignment between your inner truth and your outer presentation, you can't experience the depth of connection that your soul craves. And perhaps most costly, performing wholeness trains you to abandon yourself. Every time you smile and say, "I'm fine," when you're not, every time you show up as if you're whole when you feel fragmented, you're choosing the comfort of others over your own truth. You're practicing self-abandonment rather than self-trust. I want to name this clearly. Performing wholeness is spiritual self-harm. It's a coping strategy that trades short-term safety for long-term disconnection from yourself, your body, your voice, and your potential for real change. So what happens when you stop performing and start feeling? When you create space to acknowledge what's actually true? Your nervous system learns that you are safe to be yourself. It discovers that authenticity doesn't lead to abandonment or rejection, at least not in the contexts where you truly belong. Your emotions become data rather than enemies to hide. Instead of suppressing what you feel, you can begin to listen to the wisdom that those feelings carry. They become guides rather than threats. Your body stops carrying the story alone. When you speak your truth, when you let yourself be seen in your full humanity, your body can finally release the tension of maintaining a false front. And here's what I've witnessed again and again. Transformation happens not in the rehearsed smile, not in the "I'm fine," but in felt truth. In the willingness to say, "Actually, I'm struggling," or "I don't have it all figured out," or "This transition is harder than I expected." That's where the real work begins. That's where genuine change becomes possible. Now, I want to be clear about something. I'm not suggesting that you start sharing your deepest struggles with everyone you encounter. Discernment about who gets to access your vulnerability is wisdom, not performance. What I'm inviting you into is the recognition that you need spaces, whether with a trusted friend, a therapist, a coach, or in sacred community, where you can stop performing and start being. You need containers where your full truth is not just accepted, but welcomed, where the mess and the uncertainty and the "I don't know" are honored as part of your becoming rather than problems to solve. This is exactly what I've designed Rewilded for, to be that kind of container, a space where you can come back to what's actually true. Rewilded is my 6-month one-on-one coaching experience for women. It's a space where you can come back and see what's actually true, see it clearly, and say it aloud in a witnessed, powerful setting. It's about dropping the performance of wholeness and stepping into the reality of your becoming. It's about creating space for your body's wisdom to surface and for your authentic voice to emerge, for your soul's knowing to guide you forward. So I want to share something that I've never offered before. For this week only, I'm opening up what I'm calling a Rewilded immersion, a 3-session experience that gives you a taste of this transformative work without committing to the full program. For $997, which is just over 15% of the investment for the complete 6-month Rewilded experience, you can step into this container and discover what becomes possible when you stop performing and start being. So the 3 sessions that I'm going to give space to are the discovery session, which is an hour and a half. It's a ground truthing session where we name what's actually true beneath any performance, reconnect with your body's wisdom and cyclical nature. And then the first 2 sessions, walking the barren soil, right, which sounds intense and maybe like a little daunting, but it really is a space where we begin to release patterns of self-abandonment and uncaging your brilliance, where we get to experience what it feels like to be witnessed in your full humanity, where your brilliance that you might have never called brilliance gets to show up and we get to name it as that. And if after these 3 sessions you want to continue with the full rewilded journey, that pathway will be available. Or you can complete the immersion and integrate what you've discovered on your own. There's no pressure, no obligation, just the invitation to experience this work. So if you're feeling called to stop performing and start transforming, visit wholeandwild.com/rewilded to learn more about it. And I'm only offering this, not actually on my website. So the invitation here is to actually shoot me an email. It's emily@wholeandwild.com and mention the rewilded immersion, and we can totally set up a time to talk about it. This offer is only available this week, and so I'm keeping the container intentionally small so I can give women the full depth of presence that this work requires. As we close, I want to leave you with this. You are allowed to stop performing. You are allowed to be in process, to be uncertain, to be figuring it out. You are allowed to show up in your full, messy, beautiful humanity. The path to your authentic power doesn't run through pretending you already have it all together. It runs through the willingness to acknowledge where you actually are and trust that your truth, however incomplete or uncomfortable, is worthy of being witnessed. May you find the courage to stop performing wholeness and start embodying becoming. May you discover containers where your full truth is welcomed. May you remember that transformation happens in honesty, not in polished presentations. And may you always know that your authentic self is infinitely more powerful than any performance could ever be. Remember the sacred cycles. Reclaim your radiant fire. Unleash your intuitive magic. Thank you so much for being here, sacred woman. Until next time.